Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Monster 911. It's good to be with you once again. If you're new to the channel, my name is Lance, where I do phone interviews, sit down interviews, investigate in the field, as well as camp out overnight at encounter sighting locations. We're just going to get right into it. This show is quite amazing, as most of these encounters interviews are. And by the way, I'll just let you know, I counted up yesterday. I have exactly 50 shows right now, 50 interviews that I've done from 2025 to date that I need to edit for you guys. I have that many in the queue right now. So I will be getting those out to you guys a little bit faster. This show, this gentleman contacted me through the toll-free number. He said that he had watched a show that I had done with a gentleman named Jeff. And if you can recall, it was this show right here. Jeff was the one when he was a teenager. He was left by his stepdad and friend out under the cedar tree. This was in Oklahoma. And this creature stepped out in the moonlight, and he saw this creature with these dogs attacking its legs walk across this field. And so this gentleman saw that, and he said, I have to call Lance. So as you watch this show, if you yourself have had something similar, I'd really like to hear from you. You can call the toll-free number, or you can email me, either way, and let's talk about it. I'd really like to know what happened, the context of what happened, and if you have some questions, I actually might have some answers for you. I tell you, after doing over 1,000 of these interviews, you start to see these patterns formulate. And you can only see these patterns if you've actually interviewed that many people. So I talk about this in the book that I'm writing right now, but I really would like to hear from you. And you'll feel better getting it off your chest, I promise you. And I get into the psychology of that too. This guest here, he saw that show, and he said he had to call me, and he had never shared this story before. But as you'll hear in this twist of events, these hunters ended up being the ones hunted.
I live on a farm where I was raised, and even my grandparents on a ranch. They're all gone now, but uh, I grew up hunting and fishing. There's a creek runs through it, and it runs down, goes to another big place, and feeds into even a bigger creek. And I, like most boys, coon hunted and trapped and all that kind of stuff growing up. And there's a den up on the side of the mountain, been there for years, got mountain lions. And my brother-in-law and sister, they live not far from me, and over there. And last year they had two of their sheep. You'd find them up in a tree, what was left of them, because the mountain lion would take them and run off with them, and they'd eat part of them and have it up there. But my point is I've hunted all my life, been out in the woods my whole life, and like I said, I've been around mountain lions in pitch dark middle of the night hunting,
Mm-hmm.
and nothing has ever scared me. But what I had in that night in '92, I thought I was going to have to clean my drawers out because I thought I was going to poop all over myself. That was the most intense. Anyway, I was just giving you an idea. I wasn't some city boy that was get scared easy or something.
Right, right. And now, and I know you'll get into this, but you've really never shared this story before, aside from that lady that you told me, correct?
Yeah, that elderly lady was my ex brother-in-law's grandmother.
Okay.
She had raised him, and she knew all of that country. And it was my ex brother-in-law is up around Corsicana. It was east Corsicana, out that way, probably about 20-25 miles east of Corsicana. And what it was, there was a rancher had a huge place. He had, like, honestly, I'm not exactly sure, but he had several thousand acres. It wasn't like a small, you know, farm.
Mm.
And he had a lot of cattle on it. And he was a member of the Cattlemen's Association. And it just so happened that we had went out. I'd went with my ex brother-in-law to help this elderly man. He had some other men with him, but they were working, the cows and calves and stuff and vaccinating and all that. And we'd been out and helped before. And the Cattlemen's Association, what they do is, especially at that time, they pay a bounty on coyotes. If you cut out the ears and leave a little strip of skin between them holding them, for every set of ears that you bring in, they'll give you $50.
Mm.
And or they did at that time. And what it was we were going to go out and go hunting because it was first part of December, and we was trying to. We were young, our kids were young, and we were going to make some money for our wives to be able to go get them, Christmas and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Have a big nice Christmas. And he told me the very first time before we were all the way out to this place we were driving on the farm, and or driving to the farm rather. Those big, they're huge metal. They got their power poles, but they're four legs on them. They're like a constructed tower, and
Okay.
they're massively tall,
I think
and
I know what you're talking about.
they have multiple power lines on them, and there's a lot of them going out through there. And he said there's a place on this property. He said where you're looking out across there, and he said you're looking, and I honestly, they're way taller than a normal uh, average telephone pole.
Mm.
And he said there's three of them when you're looking out across there, and I don't know how far, but they're pretty darn far apart. He said you're going to be able to see as we're looking out across this ranch. He said there's three of them that's going to just disappear. And he said, and then you'll see the next one way away. And I said, well, what? He said, man, I don't know. He said, it's just like a crater in the ground. But it's all full of foliage and everything, trees and all that. I mean, it isn't like it's just an empty hole. It's just,
Mm-hmm.
it, it's a massive, I mean, we're talking probably a couple of miles across. I don't know how long in length. It might be 3 to 4 miles in length. But this place was so secluded and such a big ranch. We drove. We got there. It was nighttime on in December, first part of December. I don't know exactly what day, but I know it was within the first week of December. And we had went out there that night because we were going to get us some coyotes,
Mm-hmm.
plus help him out so they didn't bother his cows, killing his calves and stuff. And my brother-in-law, we went to the gate and we drove for, oh gosh, 20 minutes or more down through this ranch. And of course, not knowing exactly the whole, because it was so massive, we just found a spot at an edge of a field and just sat there for a while in the truck listening because, we didn't know exactly where would be a good place.
Mm-hmm.
And both of us had deer rifles and both of us had pistols. I had a 357 pistol and a 270 deer rifle, and he had a 30-06 deer rifle and a 45 automatic pistol. So we were well packing, we were taking
Yeah.
care of there, and we both knew how to shoot real well. Well, we sat there in the truck with the windows down, and it was cold, and we sit there. I don't know, and when we first got out of the truck after sitting there for probably 45 minutes or so, close to an hour, not hearing anything. We decided, well, we're gonna, just go walking. That way we can kind of warm up, and we'll also, just investigate.
Sure.
And maybe we'll find signs or something, or hear, some coyotes or whatever somewhere, and be able to. We didn't know, we were just going. and
Yeah, yeah.
So
Gonna
anyway, we get out and we shut the doors on the truck and we start walking. And at the time, it didn't seem like we walked very far to get to the tree line going off in out of this field where we parked the truck, and in the grass. And so, with it being wintertime, we didn't have to worry, and it was pitch dark. We didn't have to worry about it being, stepping on a rattlesnake or something.
mm-hmm.
So we were, we just didn't mind. We were just walking. We wasn't even using flashlights at the time. We had them with us, but we weren't using them walking because we thought, well, we don't want to scare anything. And we walked, listening, just walking along, not talking. Oh gosh, another 45 minutes to an hour we walked, if not longer. We didn't know exactly. The only way I could tell what direction we were going was by looking up at the North Star. That was it.
Oh, okay.
I mean, because the canopy, the trees were big, and it was just a really nice place. And once you start walking and you zigzag this way and walk that way and this and that, if it didn't have a compass, you wasn't going to know what direction you were walking.
Yeah.
And like I said, I kept looking up to see where the North Star was, so I could keep. I knew where that was if I wanted to walk back to get back to the truck.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we walked and we come up on this creek, and the creek it was dry that winter around there, and the creek was really just about not running at all. And it was really a strange area. What it was, we had come to the edge of where that them lines was them power lines was coming along through this ranch, and we came to one, and it wasn't, it was just level. And of course we looked like little bitty ants next to this thing, and we just start following it, walking the direction of the power lines above us. And we start walking, and all of a sudden we came to I don't even know how to describe it. I've been to the Grand Canyon, and I mean, it was like just poof, like that, going off down in there.
Mm.
And we stopped and was just, sit down and was just looking, because I said, hey, we got us a good high point, maybe we can sit up here and we'll see, hear something or see something or whatever. And the
Mm-hmm.
moon was shining real bright. So we were up there, and we sat there for just a little bit. Directly, my brother-in-law, ex-brother-in-law, he told me, he said, you hear that? And I said, no, I didn't hear nothing. He said, there's something moving around down there. And I said, where? And he said, down somewhere down there in that bottom of that canyon. And I said, well, don't shine a light down there because we don't want to spook it.
Right.
Thinking maybe it might have been a hog or something like that. We thought, well, we'll get a hog.
Right.
And we're hunting. It didn't matter what it was. And so anyway, finally, before it was over with, like I said, the moon was shining real bright. And this creek, where it just happened to be where we were looking down and could see this creek below us running through there. The creek was, it was coming from a distance, but you could tell it had washed and made a divide a long time ago. And there was like a little small island in the middle of the creek. And when I say an island, we're not talking something big. It was only maybe 30, 40 yards across. and the creek had just separated, going around it and then coming back together. I
Gotcha.
mean, it wasn't nothing big, but it had been there long enough and built up that it had grass and a couple of small little trees growing in the middle of it and everything, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And we're laying on it. We finally decided to lay down on the ground because we started looking down there, and every once in a while we kept getting glances of one side of that island. Something was moving around, and then we were like, well, like I said, at first we thought maybe it was a hog because you could tell it was big. The way it moved, the sound that it made, and everything.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't a small animal, and it wasn't a deer because of the way. Anyway, it just wasn't a deer. You could tell by the way it was. But it finally it moved out of the, like, I guess you'd say, the shadows, darkness of where trees were blocking some of the moon, on the edge of the creek bank. And both of us, it spooked both of us so much. Neither one of us said anything out loud, but we both were sitting straight up when on our kind of like Indian style, you know, looking off down in this canyon. And when that happened, both of us just threw our legs behind us and fell down on our bellies and was looking down in there. It like we didn't want to be seen
Mm.
because we didn't know what we were looking at.
How far were you from this?
Oh, maybe, well, at the bottom of that thing was probably a good 90 feet or so
Oh,
down in there.
okay. Okay, so you were relatively close.
Oh, yeah, but I got a lot closer for to go with.
Okay, please continue. I'm sorry.
No, that's all right. We were, it was a good 90 feet down in there to where this thing was at. And the thing about it that shocked us both was it wasn't walking on four legs. And so that really threw us off. We were like, is somebody else out here?
Mm.
And if it is, that's a big son of a gun.
Mm-hmm.
And because we were just too far to be able to tell. So finally, like I said, I grew up in the woods and I thought, well, you know, I ain't never been scared of nothing. Never met anything that I was scared of in the woods. So I was always, you know, all Bigfoot's a big bunch of baloney kind of, you know, I just hog washed, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And so I can honestly say after this night, my attitude changed. But I told my brother-in-law, I told him, ex-brother-in-law, I told him, I said, look here, I said, you stay up here with your rifle. And I said, you watch that thing. I said, I'm going to go way over here to the right and ease down this canyon wall. Try not to make any noise. And I said, I'm going to go to the opposite side of that island in that dry creek. And so I can get up and look across that little island, which was, like I said, maybe 35, 40 yards across. I wanted to be able, because if it was somebody, I didn't want us shooting at each other, you know, or something.
Right, right.
And I thought, oh, I'll get down there close, and that way I'll be able to make out, you know, and if it's somebody, you know, I can go, hey, you know, we're, you know, tell them everything's okay, and not that way we know each other there or something.
Mm-hmm.
Well, anyway, it took me a good while to go down a ways and then ease down because I wanted to come up on the opposite side of that island at that creek down there in the bottom. And because if you know if it was somebody hunting and I spooked them or something, they liable to shoot at me or something. You know, I
Exactly.
didn't want.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I did my best to be as quiet as I could, and I went down after I got to where I wanted to be positioned and went down that side of that embankment and everything, and went down in that canyon. And when I got down in there, I realized that it was a lot deeper than I thought it was. It took me longer to get down to the bottom than because
Mm.
I realized then I couldn't. For one, during the dark, it made it harder to make out stuff, and two, I can't judge distance for darn thing. I mean, I no good at all. And never have been able to. And when I got down there, it was more than 90 feet down to where it was. I really don't know. It was a long ways. But when I got down there, I started easing across that dry creek bed on that
Hmm.
one side of that island.
Okay.
And because it was dry, there was like you went across the stones in the creek bottom, and then when you got over to that island edge going around, it was, dirt and washed out around it from the water that would normally run.
Hmm.
And but there was, grass and, like I said, a few small little trees up on it, nothing big. They were little, maybe 8 or 9 feet tall, little scrub trees growing,
Right.
and here and there. And when I got up to that uh, edge of it, I had to kind of crawl up a little bit so that I could see over the edge of it because it was so tall. The embankment of in other words, if the water was running in it like normal,
Gotcha.
I, it'd have been over my head.
Okay, so you're
And
going up the embankment of the island.
yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Because whatever it is still moving around over on the other side.
Uh-huh.
It ain't never paid me no mind. Apparently, I didn't make noise, but what it was doing, you could hear it like step this way or step that way, and it just like somebody. And I thought, maybe somebody's out here. I mean, I never knew anybody to do it at nighttime, but maybe they're digging for airheads or something.
Right. Right.
And because it was kind of that was I don't know, that just the way it sounded like and everything. But they were on the opposite side of that, and like I said, I had to crawl up and get kind of up part of my chest and my arms up onto the bank to try to look across on the other side. I didn't really want to just climb on up and stand up and go, hey, and I wanted to be able to duck in case I spooked whoever it was. Well, this other person, every once in a while, I could just kind of see the movement of what looked like top of their head across over there. And finally, I slipped and made a little bit of noise with one foot, trying to hold myself up that embankment on on that island.
Mm-hmm.
And whatever it was, it didn't like have to move to position itself or step up on the other side. All it did was just raise up. In other words, like if you was stooped over, it just raised up, stood up.
Hmm.
And when it stood up, I realized, uh, that's not an animal like walks on its legs because it has arms. And this thing, it was seven, 7.5 feet easily tall. I mean,
Whoa.
it just went up, and the all I could see at that particular time was just below the chest, uh, all coming up the shoulders, the chest, and the head. And I'm like, holy crap! I've I've never seen anything like this before in my entire life.
Yeah.
I I've been with friends in Alaska, went bear hunting, and I've seen bears when they rear up, and that wasn't a bear. I mean, this thing actually had shoulders and arms like a human being looked like, at that. And I was about, I mean, I was froze. I
So
just,
you could still see this because there was enough moonlight out that you could see that it had arms and you could clearly see the outline of it and everything, correct?
oh, absolutely,
And
absolutely.
now what's the distance between you and this thing? This,
Well, like I said, across this little island was maybe 35 to 40 yards, maybe.
okay.
And
So you're
I
kind of on the ground, so to speak. You're kind of creeping up on that embankment side.
Well, I had creeped up and got my elbows up on the edge of it, and I was trying to hold myself up with my elbows, and then I had my feet kind of dug into the bank, the dry bank, and one of my feet slipped is what got the thing's attention on the other side because I was stretching my head up, you know,
Mm.
while I was holding myself up with my elbows and my feet in the bank because I had my elbows up on the part where there was grass and weeds, and I was trying to look across to see, like I said, if it was somebody. I didn't want to try to climb on up the bank and stand up and scare somebody if they shot at me.
Right.
And but I wanted to, let them know, hey, we're here, or whatever. Well, anyway, like I said, when my foot slipped, that thing, it didn't like have to get up off of its knees or nothing like that. It just, you could tell it just was bent over and it went whoop and stood up. And when it stood up, like I said, it was easily, I'm 6'3", and I was having to, like I said, wiggle up the side of the bank of that island, had my elbows up on the top of it where the grass and weeds were, so my head could be above and I could look and try to hold myself up. And I still had my feet, boots stuck. I was digging into the side of the bank, trying to keep from sliding back down. And like I said, I'm 6'3", and this thing stood up, and I could see its chest, its shoulders, parts of its arm, and its head. And it was not without any problem. And I'm like, oh man, this thing tall. And then I could realize when I seen all that instantly, I mean, it happened just like that because, yes, the moon was so bright. I just froze. I locked up. I didn't know how to process what I was looking at because in all my life growing up, I'd never seen nothing like that in the woods ever. And I I knew right away after, well, I say not right away, but it took me just a little bit, a few seconds or whatever, for my mind to finally get straight to where I realized that, first of all, this ain't a normal animal, and that it stands up like human beings, and I can see the arms, like I said, the upper part of the arms like a human being, and the chest and the head, and it's just not moving. I mean, it is not looking around. It knows where I'm at,
Mm.
and I am terrified. That's the first time in my life of it, and I'm holding a rifle, and I am terrified. Finally, my ex brother in law, I would talk to him later. He said he saw that thing moving. He said I could see you the whole time going down and everything in the moonlight of that, the bluff and coming
Mm-hmm.
down, crossing the creek and going over to that island edge. But he said, whatever that thing was, he said, I kept watching it. And he said, it was still rummaging, moving around over there on the other side. Never paid attention, never knew you were coming. But he said, when you, well, I told him later I made a noise. He didn't know what happened. He said, that thing just all of a sudden stood up. And he said, in his mind, all he could think was it was a bear because they got bear out in East Texas and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, "Dang, that's a big old bear and black bear or something." And so he's up there at the top of that bluff, laying down with his rifle, steadily watching. But he couldn't still, make out exactly what it was. The only thing was when it, reared up, he was thinking that it was a bear
Mm.
because it stood up. He could tell that it stood up, taller than it was.
Right.
And I knew it wasn't a bear down there because I was close enough I could see what it was. Well, this thing was, like I said, just standing there. And all of a sudden, it decided that it was going to come up on top of the island, not around, come up, just straight up and over toward me and walk across that island toward me. And I, at first, wanted to scream and nothing came out. And I was like, oh God. I'm thinking, because I'm a Christian and I'm thinking, Lord help me. I don't, what do I do? What do I do?
Right.
And all of a sudden, I shot my gun. I didn't hold it up to aim it or anything. It was just, I shot my gun. And just as I was shooting my gun, I obviously didn't hit the thing because I was just shooting. Anyway, it had already stepped up on top of the island. And when it did, like I said, those little trees that were scrub trees and stuff that were growing here and there.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, but it still kind of spooks me a little bit.
That's okay. Just
take some years.
Take your time.
Anyway, those trees were, like I said, maybe 8 or 9 feet tall.
Right.
And this thing was within a foot or foot and a half of being as tall as them trees.
Oh my.
And it was, I mean, it was across, it was just big arms, big chest. And then I could see its whole body. And that man was talking about how that thing's legs, it had like a knee and then an ankle, something. Yeah, it was weird.
Did it look canine? I mean, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but
no.
This was more like what you saw that show with Jeff. Jeff was his name. When he was a teenager.
Yeah. Well, I didn't see it. I listened to it. I'm legally blind now.
Oh, okay. So when he described Jeff, that is, described what he saw, you told me in the message that it reminded you of this. If you don't mind, I know it's hard, but could you describe at the time what you saw?
The head was you know how like you would see hair on somebody's head? You could see like there's their head and then they have hair.
Yes, sir.
The head was there, but there was I saw no hair that I could make out, like long hair or something, or anything.
Okay.
It was just the shape of it, and it may have been because of I was only getting what I was seeing from the moonlight.
Okay.
But I just really didn't make out any like a Bigfoot with a lot of hair or something on it or something. I just didn't. Not to say that it didn't have it, I don't know. But what got me was when I looked at the legs, because I just was staring at it and my eyes went down looking at this massive, tall thing. Because in my mind, I kept trying to say, it's a man. It's a man. And the more I looked at it, I'm like, it ain't a man. I didn't know what it was, and I didn't know how to identify it. Other than it had arms like a man and it had legs, but when I went down the legs didn't look like a man. Because when it got to the knee parts, down below the knees, it had like another bend, but they bent backwards. Like it would hinge. You know how your knee bends forward?
Yes.
Well, the next joint would bend backwards before it got to the foot. It was very strange. And it wasn't like, I mean, you could tell that's the way it bent, but it wasn't like it was bent like that standing. Just same as your knees,
Right.
He's pointing toward me because it was facing me, but down at the bottom, right before you got a little ways before you got to the foot, it had pointing back. The neck, it had another like a knee, but it was pointing back. I don't know how to explain it,
When you were
but
looking at its lower legs then, and you saw that it had kind of this opposite reversed
joint.
joint, could you see hair down there, or was it hairless as well?
No, I didn't. I don't recall seeing hair.
Okay. Did now when you heard the show with Jeff, he was trying to describe its feet by saying it had like these appendages. He didn't call them fingers, but that's kind of the way he sculpted with clay that I got to see up close
Oh,
this, and it had like, if you were to take toes and stretch them out like fingers, he called them appendages that kind of grasp things. Could you tell anything like that? Like it had appendages like that, the way Jeff was describing what he saw,
um,
or not?
no, the grass and weeds were too high, and I didn't see
Okay.
its feet. But the way it was able, you know how normally, like me, just a man trying to get up the side of that embankment, to the island.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I was using my hands, my knees, and my feet trying to, oonch up it, trying to climb up it. When this thing stood up, it never put its feet, hands down, arms or nothing to try to like grab a hold to walk up that bank. I never thought about it really at the time. I just thought, well, its legs were so big, it just stepped up the back. I didn't know.
Mm.
So if it had feet like that, that would have most definitely helped it do that. But I don't know. I couldn't see its feet. It was the grass and weeds. I looked down, and all I know is before it got to the feet, it looked like it had a knee joint, but it was facing the opposite direction, and I was just like, what? And of course, it was a little more intensified at the time. But one of the things that really got me about that story that man was talking about is what's about to fixing to happen in this story of mine.
Okay.
After I fired that shot, I started screaming at my brother-in-law up there, shoot, shoot, shoot. And he started shooting down there toward whatever this thing was. And at the same time, I mean, I don't even remember. I just remember turning and running. But I did get to the top finally. It seemed like forever. But I got back up on top of that bluff and was running to him. And I said, we need to get out of here. And he was like, what was it? What'd you see? All that. I said, we need to go. And we took off. Well, that man that was in that show you were talking to that I listened to, he was talking about the thing that he saw was with some coyotes, I think, or something.
Yeah, there was some either he said they were either wild dogs, domestic dogs, or coyotes. He wasn't sure, but they were kind of attacking the legs of this creature, and they wouldn't leave the creature's lower legs alone, as this
Okay.
creature was on a mission, like just walking in one direction.
Yeah, but they weren't. He wasn't like fighting with them.
Not with its upper arms. They were just they
Yeah,
were just snapping and
yeah.
biting, and that was it. It was just its upper.
Uh
It
huh.
never bent down to deal with the dogs.
Oh, yep, yep. Okay, this is where when he started explaining that, I was just like, oh my god. I just me and my brother. Now go back to my story. Me and my ex brother-in-law, we start going, and we're a long ways. We're like I said, we'd walked well over an hour into where we were at on this ranch,
Mm.
and we start at first. We're just kind of at a brisk walk, and man, I am my head's on a swivel because I hadn't told him what I saw.
Okay.
He just keeps asking me, what was it? What was it? And I said, I'll tell you later. I'll tell you later. Just, we need to go. We need to go. And we just kept walking. And of course, every just a few seconds, he would ask me again, well, what was it? And I didn't want to talk about it. I wanted to get back to the truck. When we were leaving and on the road, I could tell him then. I was not interested in having a discussion about it at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, my head was on a swivel. And I told him, I said, if anything moves, you shoot it. I said, I don't care if it's directly in front of me, behind us, whatever. I said, if something moves, you shoot it. And I said, if it accidentally turns out to be one of that man's cows, I'll pay for it. But I said, I was terrified. And we start heading through the woods coming back. And of course, that just made every step more terrifying because you're out there. Once you get into the trees and everything, well, you don't have this moonlight like you did, being able to
Mm.
see.
Right, right.
And I told my brother-in-law, I said, don't turn your flashlight. And he said, well, wouldn't that be easier to see? I said, I don't want our flash. Yeah, I'm thinking, don't want somebody to be able to see us. That's just my logic. But whatever this thing was, it wouldn't have cared whether we had a flashlight or not. It would have been able to know where we was. But here's where the thing comes in, was what that man was talking about with them coyotes. And I have in all my life, and I still live on a ranch, and I have never, ever heard of anybody having this, which I've never told anybody about it, but I've never heard of anybody talking about it. And I've never heard anybody that I've never heard it happen. I've never had it happen again in my entire life, before or after. And it just blew my mind still to this day. And when that man, that's the first time I've ever heard anybody saying something like that,
Mm-hmm.
it dawned on me. Them coyotes, dogs, whatever they were, the reason that he wasn't fighting, that thing wasn't fighting with them, they were either like, you have, hunting dogs or pets,
Mm-hmm.
you're either training them or they're just running along with you, and you know how they'll come up, they're all around your legs and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, all of a sudden we start hearing coyotes, and I don't mean like off in the distance, howling kind of coyotes. We literally can hear them running. There's so many of them, and they're running from behind us back there. And so we take off running. And as we're running, I told my brother-in-law, we were running, I said, stop. And we stopped. And he tried to say something. And I said, be still, be quiet. And you could hear those coyotes split and start going around on either side of us. I have no idea how many there were. But every once in a while, we heard a noise. And when I say a noise, it was between a grunt and a grunt and a guttural sound that was made. Sometimes it would just be like a rah once, and I'm not even sounding like it, but anyway, it would just do it once. And then sometimes it would be like it made a couple of sounds. And wherever we went, running zigzag, what all we did going through the woods, because we would run a ways and stop because we'd want to try to listen to where these coyotes were, dogs, coyotes, whatever they were. We thought for sure they were coyotes. And anyway, we would go periodically running just as fast as we could and then stop to listen to make sure we wasn't running into them,
Mm.
because we could hear them. And when I say we could hear them, they were, how angry, vicious, wild, like a pack of coyotes or wolves are. and they're barking and
Mm-hmm.
they're not howling. They're barking, growling, and snapping their teeth.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's what these, and they were all around us. And I told my brother-in-law, I said, they come in on us. I said, you grab that pistol and just start emptying that thing on them. And I said, I hope to God you got more bullets, because I said, there's more of them than we got bullets.
Mm.
And we're trying to get through there. And James is my ex brother-in-law. He, like I said, we just periodically we run till we're just about out of breath, and we'd stop and listen. And these things are staying around us. They're not coming in on us. They're staying around us. Although the closer we got to that opening, and I can tell you, that hour, a little over an hour or so that we had took walking in there,
Mm-hmm.
seemed like a year trying to get. I tell people I spent a month out there that night, because it seemed like forever trying to get back to where that opening in that field was, where the pickup was at.
Man.
And these things finally kept getting closer and closer. And you would hear periodically that noise of something. And we began to realize whatever was making that noise was just it was just like somebody that, and I've been around that my whole life as well, people with cow dogs. I got a cow dog. And you talk to them, and lay down or go that way.
They were being worked.
Yep. They were directed. They were being talked to.
Whoa.
They were being talked to. And when that man was talking about that creature thing, whatever it was, because the way he described it, I was like, oh crap, that's exactly what I saw, and I've never heard anybody say that. I always just hear Bigfoot stuff. This was not a Bigfoot. I can tell you that right now. Whatever it was that I was able to see when I could see back then was not a Bigfoot, but
Do
it was big.
I asked you if it looked canine, and you quickly said no. Do you still think it was? Why do you say it wasn't canine?
Because face, when uh, at one point, you know how you'll turn your head to like listen?
Yes.
Okay, this thing, when it was looking at me coming up on top of that island, and its step, man, its strides were long across. It was to maybe 15 to 20 yards away from me when it finally just stopped for a moment, and basically in the middle of that island. And I'm looking at it and feeling very, very small. And this thing, I'm trying not to even breathe, and much less move. And it was staring at me, but then it tilted its head sideways, like it was listening for me, or maybe it was looking. But I think it was just like, turn it how you'll turn your head to listen. That's the way it seemed to me.
Kind of like a
And when,
profile. It gave a profile.
yep. And it was still, the body was facing me, but the head turned sideways, just like somebody that would turn that was listening, like waiting to hear if they heard something else, like a footstep or something.
Right.
And when it turned its head, I could see the profile of the outline of its face head, and it didn't have no protruding nose like a
Snout.
dog, or no. It was just more, I would say rounded off like a human being's. It wasn't like sticking out. And
So,
I
it does sound a lot like what Jeff saw then and described to a certain
oh yeah,
degree.
yeah.
Yeah. It it had, upper appendages, it had a torso, it had lower legs, but everything about it said that it wasn't human.
Oh well, yeah. I ain't never seen a human that had a knee joint below the knee joint that went the opposite direction.
Mm-hmm. He said it had skin on it, like
Yep.
if you were to pull a membrane really tight over muscle. And that's the way he described it. It's like he said there was enough moonlight on this particular night, which ironically there is with your encounter. He said it
Yeah.
was like you pull a membrane over or fascia over a muscle. And you could see kind of the shininess that it had no hair, but it was hairless, but it just didn't move. It was way too big, and it
Yeah.
did not move like a man, and the strides were so big
Yep.
it just did not say human at all.
Nope. Oh no. Oh no. This was not a human. This was not
So
a man.
I interrupted, but you said so you're trying to get to that open field.
Yeah. Well,
What
like I
happened?
said, I never saw hair on that thing that I looked at. That's when you asked me. I never saw hair. If there was, I never saw it anywhere on it. I didn't see hair.
Hmm.
Uh, but it was like I said. I could see the arms, and I could make out that it had muscles and stuff. So if it had hair, it was extremely short, slick haired or something. I I was so close. I was literally like about to poop my pants. But anyway, when my brother-in-law, ex-brother-in-law, had shot at it, I honestly couldn't tell you what happened. At He never even, I don't think, told me. So apparently, it like you know uh, made it move away from me,
Mm-hmm.
because I was too busy climbing up the side. I flew across that dry creek bed and was just shinnying up that dead gum, climbing every which way I could to get up that bluff, to get up out of there.
Right.
So I don't know, but obviously, and not, I'm knocking rocks off and everything else, climbing up that thing and breathing hard. Right? Obviously, this thing somehow signaled, whether it called out to them or whatever, them coyotes, dogs, whatever they were. To me, it sounds just like coyotes. And anyway, because they came like a pack of hunting dogs, they were being directed and controlled. And when that man was talking about those running around, it's just like a pack of dogs that you're taking hunting. Because my granddad used to have a bunch of hound dogs, old bloodhounds and stuff that he'd take out, and we'd let them run at night, and we'd build a fire and just sit by the fire and drink coffee while they was running, and hunting and stuff.
Mm.
And that's when you was going out with them and whatnot. That's the way they were. They'd be all around your legs and everything else, and just around you,
Mm-hmm.
and until they went after something, we'd send them out after. And anyhow, yeah, we had finally made it to the edge of the woods, and I mean you could see the truck out there. And like I said at the beginning of the story, we didn't think we was that far. I didn't think we were that far. It didn't seem like from the tree line, but we were further from that tree line than I had initially thought. Because apparently we had stopped a little ways from getting to the edge of it. So, when we first got there and we were going to shoot coyotes, we thought, well, if some of them will come out, we'll be able to see them. They won't be in the trees,
Mm.
and we can shoot at them. And we're at the edge of that thing, opening going into that field, and the truck's out there, and that truck's a good 75, 80 yards away. And it might as well have been a mile. I was like, that's wide open. We're
Hmm.
out here. Don't we? Nobody's here. This was before people was carrying cell phones in their hip pocket or whatever.
Right.
So it wasn't like we could call for help. And finally, were these coyotes. I'm just going to call them coyotes. Like I said, there could have been wild dogs in there. I don't know, but we weren't seeing them. We were hearing them, and they were getting extremely close. They'd quit running, and they were like a U shape all the way around us in the trees, because the open side of it, it was like they were just closing in on us slowly, creeping, waiting for us to run out in the open, and they were just going to rip us to shreds.
Hmm.
And I've never even seen or heard that many coyotes in one place. I hear a lot of them out here and have dealt with them over the years. And, there'd be 15, 20 in a pack. I'm telling you, I don't know how many was in this one. There was a bunch. And anyway, in between them growling and snapping their teeth in the trees around us and stuff, every once in a while you would hear that noise. And over the years, I have thought about it, because I definitely never told anybody about it, because I was afraid they'd tell me, "You're crazy. What are you talking about?" Everybody be, making fun of you
Right.
and making up a story or something. And anyhow, this, whatever that critter was, that I'm calling it a critter, that big thing
The creature,
that
yeah.
walked like a feller, kind of, sort of, except for that extra knee it had down there below its regular knee, going the wrong way. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
that thing, what it was doing was making those noises, and it was just like when you're hunting with dogs and you get them right up on something, and you'll talk to them and tell them, easy, easy. They don't attack until you tell them to. And
Yeah. Yeah, and sometimes when those working dogs, whether it's sheep or cattle or whatever it is, sometimes you can train them just to, it's a sound or a whistle or a yell or a hoop, they know
yeah,
what that means. Circle left, circle right, come
yeah.
in, stay back.
Oh yeah,
And so it just depends on the training. So these occasional grunts or this guttural sound you think was the calling of whatever this creature was behind and working these coyotes or whatever they were
they
working in
chased us.
around you.
They chased us in the woods. They actually, where we came out at the edge of the field finally, was not where we had initially went in.
Oh,
These We were down a ways away from it, and it was because as we were running, we were trying. Those coyotes were on behind us. Like I said, they were in a U shape, all the way behind us and on either side. And we didn't realize it at the time, but they directed us the way we were going. So in other words, they were herding us, and we didn't
hmm.
we didn't know it. And when we got to the edge of where that field was, where we could see the truck, we finally decided, because they were getting closer. They started moving in real slow, and I told them, I said, we got to go. I said, if we don't, they're going to eat us alive. And I had never, and I before then nor since then, have I ever had that experience. Never even heard anybody being hunted down by a pack of coyotes like that. But whatever this thing was, just like a man would do with dogs, he would whatever it was using them to hunt us down. And we finally broke and ran for them trees, or out of them trees, running for the truck. And we got to the truck, and as we were running, we were so scared. We would shoot, just not even looking. We would just put our pistols behind us, just point. We're just shooting, just to be shooting,
I'm
because
sorry,
we were
you cut
scared.
out there just for a second. So you were, repeat that again?
We were running toward the truck, and as we were running, we had our arms behind us. We didn't even look back. We had our arms with our pistols in our hands, aimed behind us, and we just shot. We didn't even know where the bullets were going. We were just shooting behind us, not looking back, running because we were hoping, that would deter whatever was chasing us, the coyotes that were
Right,
chasing us.
right.
And we got to the truck, and of course, neither one of us had any bullets in our pistols anymore. We got in that truck, and he cranked it up, and when the headlights came on, that as long as I live on this earth, I will never forget what I saw. And he saw it, and he said, "I'm never coming out here again in my lifetime." And I said, "Well, I ain't neither." We were talking. That was on the road though. Later, as we were coming back, on the we when he hit the headlights on that pickup and he started it up, it was like looking at the stars. You could not count the number of eyes in those tree lines from where we came going out across, and they weren't in one spot. They stretched out. There were so many coyotes in them trees, right along in them trees. I've never seen that many in my life. And at one point, as my brother-in-law was starting to turn the truck to turn around, I mean, just briefly for a second, both of us, but he got a glance. There was a set of eyes reflecting just like the coyotes. Weren't the same color, but they reflected. All those coyotes had red eyes. This had green eyes that reflected, and from the light, and it looked like the out just staring straight at us. It was the outcrop shape of a human figure, sort of, but it was, you could tell it was huge. And my ex brother in law, like I said, he just let off the gas for a second as he was turning, and then he punched it and just took off, driving up out of this ranch, trying to get back to the main gate to get out of there. And as we were driving, he said, "What in the you know what was that?" And I said, "That's what I told you you did not want to know." And did you know that his grandmother grew up in that part of the country? And
Okay.
when we got back, we had already talked amongst each other. And on the way home,
Okay.
we were both scared just completely out of our minds. And he was telling me he wasn't somebody that had spent their life in the woods like I had. And he said, "I've never seen you scared of nothing." He said, "What was that?" And I said, "What'd you see? When the truck turned." And he said, "I'm not sure." And I said, "I think you know." And he said, "Well, I ain't gonna talk about it no more." And so we didn't. And when we got back, we just we went in the house because me and my ex-wife were and kids were visiting, and we both just went to bed with our wives. He was married to my sister at the time, and we just we didn't discuss it because of the simple fact that we're grown men and we got scared like little bitty baby kids and was running out of there like two little girls that were 5 years old that somebody's scared or something.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we were terrified. But the next day, he went to see his granny. We just called her Granny, and the, his grandmother that raised him. And he told her what he saw, or what we saw, or
Mm-hmm.
what he thought he saw in that brief moment when he turned. And he told her what had happened. And she grew up just east of Corsicana out there. And in 92, she was 80, about somewhere around 83 to 85 years old. And so she went back a ways, and she knew that area.
Mm-hmm.
And after he told her that story of what had happened to us, she said, "You boys don't ever go in them woods again." And of course, we were like looking at each other like, "That's not a problem. Not going to happen."
Mm-hmm.
And she said she kind of stammered around there for a little bit, sitting there in her chair. And she got her a cup of coffee. And you know how you can tell when somebody's got something on their mind they want to say, but they just don't come out and say it.
Yes, yes, exactly.
Finally, she said, "You could." She was kind of quiet about it at first when she first started to talk, but she finally come out and said that when she was a little girl, she because she grew up on a farm somewhere out that direction, toward heading toward east out of Corsicana,
Mm-hmm.
and there was nowhere near as many homes and ranches as there was then.
Right, right.
So she was like maybe 9, 10 year old little girl, and I forgot what she said she was doing, but she was outside the house, and they had one of those old uh, hand pumping well water things.
Mm-hmm.
You moved it up and down,
Right. Yes.
and I don't know whether it worked still or not, but because that would have been in like what, the 20s or something. I mean,
See, at
I don't know.
92, she was in her 80s, so probably.
Yeah. Eh, she said that there was a fence that ran. It was over a few. She just said feet, a few feet away from the house that went way down. Going into the pasture and from on the farm where she grew up. And she said that there was this barbed wire fence. It was like a 5 strand barbed wire fence. And she said that their old milk cow, went out there and grazed around, and then they would bring it in. Well, they brought it in the morning to the barn and milked it and fed it, and same way in the evening. And she was out there doing whatever, and she was next to that old water pumpy thing, and standing out there, probably just playing, being a kid. But she said she looked up out across there, and she thought it at first she saw the cow. Anyway, she saw, she described it, and it sounded like pretty much what I saw. And she said it walked up to a 5 foot, 5 strand barbed wire fence, which most of them are between 4.5 to 5 feet tall.
Mm-hmm.
That's standard. And she said she just watched this thing way down there in the distance. She realized then it wasn't a milk cow because it was walking upright when it come through down across there, and it just lifted up 1 foot and stepped over her leg and stepped over it, and then lifted up the other one. It, in other words, basically almost didn't break stride walking. And she said, "I tried to tell my mother, and my mother thought I was just making up stories.
Mm-hmm.
And she said she never saw anything again, but it scared. She was still at 80. Like I said, she was 83, 84, maybe 85, right in there at that time. She passed away not long after that, about a year or two later. But she, it still scared her telling that, and all she did was see it from that distance as a little girl. And she said, but she told us again before we had left. She said, "You boys promised me you're never going to go back out there again." And of course, we were like,
Yeah.
"Absolutely, never going to happen again." And you know, we were both grown men. I mean, my brother, ex-brother-in-law, I mean, I'd been with him before, and we'd went to the bar and things like that, and got in bar fights and stuff. I mean, he wasn't scared of nothing or nobody,
Mm-hmm.
and I wasn't either at the time, you know.
Right.
And I mean, I'm still not scared of mountain lions and stuff like that. But every once in a while, when I'm out at nighttime, because ever since then, even to this very day, because now I can walk all over my ranch at night, and I don't need a flashlight because can't see anyway. And I got a big dog that goes with me, and I can make out colors because I'm legally blind. I'm not totally blind, and I can make out colors. And he is a solid white uh, dog. He's a oh, I just went blank. He's the kind that come from over around Africa that are they or is it India? They're that's the reason I got him, because they have extra dew claws instead of just one up on the side of their leg. They have two,
Mm.
and they call them lion killers because that's what they use them for, is to hunt tigers and lions.
Mm. They're a big
And
dog.
he's if somebody comes out here, I have to put him in the yard. I can't. But during the day, I let him the gates open. That way, if somebody comes up out here and I don't know who they are on my
Mm-hmm.
ranch, you know, I'm out here by myself.
Right.
They're gonna have to go through that dog to get to me. And so when I go out at night, with him being a white light color, I can see him. His body's, you know, solid, and I can make out where he's moving at. I can't like totally see him, but I can make out where he's at. Plus, he spends most of his time right next to me unless he goes after something. And I always get, I just have that in the back of my mind when I go out when something's going on. Like if I hear it, you know, after like cows having calves or whatever or something, any kind of disturbance. I got chickens and geese and ducks and stuff. And if I hear something going on and he knows and wants to go out there, well, I take off walking with him. Of course, he'll run ahead and, you know, he's after whatever it is. And I still, in the back of my mind, I just terrified that whatever, I'm going to see something step out
Yeah. Of course.
like I did that night.
I
I've
can
never
only
saw,
imagine.
yeah, because I know that there's more out there than just what I always initially thought my whole entire, or what I was taught to believe there was out there in the woods,
Mm.
and all that I ever saw. And like I said, I've seen bears and been around them, and I've mountain lions. The bears are not around here, but you know, here growing up, mountain lions and you know, uh, nothing. I never seen anything like that would scare me. And yep, that. But I no, I've absolutely never told that story to a single solitary soul. Uh,
So,
and
what do you think it was?
there's a movie. This is really the best way I can explain it to what I saw. I remember seeing a movie years ago. I think it came out in the '60s or '70s, uh, and it was about. I'm trying to remember. It's this Greek mythology, but it was oh Baghdad and the Argonauts or something like that, or he was after, he had to go and get like Medusa's head, and he had to go and, you know, it was all Greek mythology stuff, but it was a
Right.
movie. And he cut off Medusa's head and put it in a sack. He had to go and get a I don't know. He just went on this adventure and sailed in different places and went, But there was a sea creature at one point in time that stood up out of the sea. Uh, it was close to the shore, but it was on two legs and had, arms, and its head, the way that thing moved and what it looked like, the way they had it, in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty much what it looked like to me. And the way that thing moved, it, and the way it looked facing it, I was like, wow. And I don't know. I'm not saying it was identical, but it made me think about it a lot. It looked a lot,
Sure.
similar. And because when the joints on something isn't like ours, they don't move exactly like we do. Just because they have arms and legs, if their appendages have joints that aren't like ours exactly, they don't walk and move fluently the way we do.
Right.
That's kind of hard to explain, but anyway, yeah.
No, it's kind of it's difficult to describe, as it was with Jeff too. It's difficult to describe something you've never seen before to something you can relate to or have seen before when you've never seen anything like it. You're trying to, and the only thing we can relate it to is movies sometimes.
Yeah, yeah. Like I said, that I remember that movie, and I was like, that was a lot like what I was looking at, except I honestly can't remember if the creature had one or two eyes. The thing that I saw that night had two eyes, but the rest of the body was, you know, legs and arms and everything similar to a human being, and that it just and the head and everything. And I was like, wow, that's kind of similar to what I looked at that night. It, but yeah, it was. But
Definitely wasn't human.
oh no, sir. No, no. And but when even now, still before when I could see years after that, and even now, if I go out in the woods, I don't care whether it's day or dark, daylight or dark, because I can make out the difference between daylight and dark. Like I
Mm-hmm.
said, I'm not totally blind, but it's uh, hard to explain. But anyway, the if I even get the feeling something ain't right, I just go. I leave. I'm not gonna wait around to find out. If I get a shiver or just a sense of something not right,
Mm-hmm.
I'm turning around heading the other way. I'm not. Yeah. Well, here's the bizarre part. The ranch that I have that I live on that I've grown up on is just extremely close to the a military base, a huge military base, and it's not. I mean, it's a almost daily occurrence seeing helicopters fly over my ranch and things like that. So that's not nothing new.
Mm.
But I have filmed and I have seen when I could see stuff uh, out here over my property at night that I have a friend who is retired. He's 76 years old. I think his birthday. Yeah, he's 76 now. He's retired Air Force. And I have shown the stuff to him that I recorded. And he said, I got no clue what that is. And I've had, and I filmed this as well, helicopters, military, like Apache and Black Hawk at nighttime. Not just every great once in a while it'll happen. And the first time it happened, I thought, oh Lord, somebody escaped from prison or something.
Mm-hmm.
They were flying on my ranch, and they were shining a like a one of them
Mm.
uh the big lights down so they could see on the
Mm-hmm.
ground,
Mm-hmm.
and they were so low that the trees as they would go over were moving. They weren't supposed they're not supposed to fly that low and over commercial, out civilian off of red.
Right.
And yeah, I videoed him, and he said, "Man, you need to call that in. They're not supposed to be flying that low." And I said, "Well, to be honest with you, that wasn't what concerned me. I said what I want to know is what they're looking for."
Well, that's the thing. Is did you ever find out?
Are you kidding? I called Fort Hood and over there, and they're like, "Uh, we don't have no helicopters over there." And I'd hold the phone up, going, "You hear that? I don't live but just hop, skip, and a jump from y'all over there, and I'm looking right straight up at Black Hawk helicopters and Apaches. Not one, not two, not three. I'm talking four, five, six of them flying crisscrossing all around, all over my ranch. They're looking for something,
And they
and then
still denied it.
oh yeah, oh yeah. I've grew up here. Every time there was they had a one time some kind of a missile thing that they had shot years ago when I was a kid, and part of the debris landed on our property on this ranch. And when they came out, my dad had already went up there, and way up on the because this ranch goes down two county roads, and part of it, the debris from that rocket they had fired, it went the wrong direction apparently and blew up in the air. I guess I don't know, or it malfunctioned or something. And part of the debris landed on our ranch, and then across the county road going across this other big ranch, part of it landed out there, and they were coming to clean it and up and get it all. And it was just, being a kid, I was like, oh, I want to go out there and pick up some of that stuff. I thought maybe I'd find something really cool.
Right, right.
They wouldn't let us get close. And so,
Well,
but I
it's
have,
that plausible deniability. They just we can't deny what don't have. So I don't know who you're looking at, kind of thing.
yeah,
And
oh,
I
yeah,
always tell people your red flag should go up anytime you see a military style low flying like a scout helicopter with lights or dome under the belly, that infrared that they've got, or thermal.
yeah,
It can switch probably back and forth. But when you see that on lands at night,
yeah.
red flags should go up. They're looking for something, and it ain't coyotes.
Uh,
It ain't
well,
it ain't
military.
cattle. It's not coyotes. It's something else.
Oh, yeah. And the thing is, I mean, you can believe this or not, but just last week, I can make out lights. I can't make out what it is, but I can make out lights at nighttime because difference between light and dark.
Mm-hmm.
And so I grab my cell phone, and I all I can do is like tell it because like my phone, it talks to me. I can talk to it, and it'll text for me, and when somebody texts me, it'll read it back to me and out loud. And you can voice command the phone,
Mm.
and so like I can tell it because it's got a disability app or something. I don't know. My sister and brother-in-law know how to do it, but anyway, set it up. But anyway, um, so that the camera comes on to film, And I filmed these lights coming over because it was real slow, wasn't making any noise. And which like I said, I've in the past, stuff that I could see just clear as a bell when I could see, videoed it, and you would not believe the stuff I videoed. And my and took pictures of. Anyway, just this last week of the end of October before Halloween, I seen this something start coming across my ranch, and I was out on the front porch, and I just seen the lights. And at first I thought, "Oh, there's a airplane coming over." Wasn't making any noise,
Mm-hmm.
so I held the phone up, and I just held it up toward it, hoping I was getting a good view of it, and let it go by. It just went by. Never, you know how you hear the sound of jets or something behind them?
Right, like a jet wash or
Nope,
something.
nope, not a darn thing. Finally, I got a good enough video, I guess, of it where you can make out whatever. And that friend I was telling you about that's 76 years old, retired Air Force,
Mm-hmm.
I, I handed it to him and he went, mm-hmm. And I said, and what? And he said, yeah. He said, I seen one of those when I was in the Air Force out in, I believe he said Nevada, Arizona. And he said it was seen by a bunch of people at the time. I think that was in the 80s, he said, late 80s. Or it could have been the 90s, I don't know. But anyway, he said he saw it. And he said a bunch of other people saw it in Arizona or Nevada. I think it was Nevada. Anyway, they saw it, and it was on the news and everything else. And he said, "Yeah, I seen one of those." And he said, "And it's big, ain't little. It's big, triangular shape, something or other with lights
Mm-hmm.
on it." And I asked him, I said, "So what was it?" And he said, "I don't know." He said, "Because I asked my commander, and he said I was told to mind my own business and go about what I was supposed to be doing."
I think there's a lot of those sightings in plain sight at these military installations, these bases, than what we even know as civilians. And they're told in no uncertain terms, you know, shut your mouth. They may be repercussions. Um, you didn't see what you saw, and don't talk about it again. And that
Yeah.
goes on a lot, I think, more so than what we even think.
Well, I know there's uh, places out here in this military base that's next to my ranch, not far from my ranch here. There's that there's, I mean, it's less than 5 miles from my ranch to the entrance going in on this military base, uh, and it's not like great big entrance where you'd see. Uh, it's kind of like Area 51 entrance. You know what I mean?
Very,
Now, it has big entrances, but they're many miles away on a different part of uh, the installation.
mm,
But it's it. But no, I mean you can pick any any night of the week. I don't care, Monday through Sunday. Come out here, sit in a lawn chair. I've had people sit on the porch, sit out in the yard, and I'm just like, well, get ready. You're gonna see something before the night's over with. And this stuff happens all the time. Like I said, whatever the heck that was, just last week, I don't know. I see stuff all the time.
man.
I don't see it like I used to could, but I mean, I see it. I just don't know. I can't make it out because I can't see it clearly. But uh, I have no idea when things are moving around and they don't make noise. I know prop planes. I know jet planes. I know helicopters. Even when they changed the pitch on the helicopters, because I've grown up here on this ranch next to that military installation. So I
Hmm.
know the sounds of all of them. And when something comes over and it makes absolutely no noise, there's something wrong.
Yeah, you've got something else going on, and either it's a technology that the U.S. or maybe a corporation that has been contracted through the military industrial complex of the U.S. been contracted, and they have developed reverse engineered some technology that is not of this earth, possibly alien type technology that
Yeah,
requires
there's
no thrusters, no gas combusted type of jet engines, or it is literally visitors.
yeah. Well, there's something my daddy always told me, bless his heart. Now that he's been passed away for quite a few years, but uh, there's something he always told me growing up. Because I'd ask him. Because like I said, we've seen strange stuff on this ranch at nighttime for my whole life that I can remember, and apparently it had been going on quite a while he was a younger man. But anyway, I I'd ask him about it. I was like, aliens. Did he believe in aliens or whatever? And his
Mm-hmm.
answer to me was always the same thing. He said, "Son," he said, because like I said, I was raised in a church, Christian. I still go to church. I believe in God.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is my dad said, you would have to be very small minded to think that if God created this planet and put us on it, with all that's out there in the universe that they can't even see, that there's not another world with other folks on it. They may not look like us, but if he can create this, why couldn't he create more? You'd be kind
Right.
of small minded not to think that that's not possible. And he said, so yeah. He said, I feel pretty sure there's other planets, and they're probably going, wonder what's out there, and then like we do.
Yeah. No, that's a very good point and very very logical to think and say.
Yeah,
Um,
and that's just all he ever had to say about it. So I was like, yeah, makes sense.
yeah, absolutely. And so I'm going back a little bit, if you don't mind, to
Sure.
to this encounter. Did your ex brother in law, when you said that you weren't gonna, he said he didn't want to talk about it. Did he ever talk about it again? Did you guys ever bring it up again?
Nope, not a sense. He never wanted to, and honestly, I just we just never spoke about it again after we talked to his grandmother the next day. I mean, that was it. She told us never go back and let it go, and we did because we were like, if we talk to anybody, they're going to think we're idiots or alcoholics or something.
Well, that always brings up a good point, and I'm glad you brought it up because
Well,
what made you feel led to call me? And was it the story that Jeff had, or and how do you feel now in sharing the story a little bit?
well, I feel better. It's kind of like getting something off of your chest, that you kept close and tight. You couldn't forget, and it was on your mind. It ain't like you ever gonna forget it. It kind of branded in your brain.
Mm-hmm.
Um, whatever anybody may have experienced or seen, and if anybody ever wanted to tell me, I would just sit and listen to them. I would never make fun of them. I would
Right.
I would just all I want to do is hear their experience and because like that man, like I said, I've spent all these years. I've never heard anybody say anything. But the main thing about that man's story, other than what he saw, the talking about the creature.
Mm-hmm.
The 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 main thing that really, I mean, light bulb went off in my head was when he started talking about it. Was walking with those coyotes or pups or whatever it was, dogs. Um, because I was like, oh God, I
Mm-hmm.
don't know if he realized it or not, but it's just like a human being walking with a pack of dogs or something or coyotes, and they're playing all around and messing around his legs, and he's not reaching down to swat them away or fight them or anything because they're his. And
Yeah.
that's the first thing that entered my mind. I'm like, he's training them, teaching them to hunt, just like that one did us that night. But yeah, I remember you asking me, and I was saying, oh, if it had hair, it was extremely short because I wasn't focused on that. It was just the fact that the more I've thought about it, I could see the, like I said, you know how the men that work out, you can see their, what do you call it, in the chest and
Well,
in their stomach.
the muscle fibers.
Yeah, how you can see it's six pack, you know how
Yeah, yeah.
like that. The muscles on it, it was defined all over it like that,
Okay.
and it was you could it was like a bodybuilder, muscles. You could see but like I said, it was dark. Even with the moonlight on it, I couldn't. Like I said, if it had hair on it, the hair was so short
Mm,
and close to it, I uh couldn't tell. I
right.
just, like I said, I froze, and then I I don't even know if I intentionally pulled the trigger because I didn't have the gun up aimed at it, and I just was turning around to run, and which is, I think back now, and I'm like, well, why did I turn and run? I know why I turned and run, but 100 times you second guess yourself. It's like you should have pulled out your pistol and just emptied it on it. I was like,
Right. Well,
I was
that might.
screaming at my brother-in-law, shoot, shoot, shoot.
Yeah, exactly. We think back what we should have, could have done,
Yeah,
but at that time, it was more appropriate for your mind to say, "Get out of Dodge."
yeah. Oh, it's fight or flight, and I took flight. I tell you.
Well, you froze initially
Oh yeah.
because that's part of our nurse. Everybody knows the fight and flight, but there's actually a third element to that. There is freeze, flight, or fight in that order. And most of the people don't realize that there's a freeze component to it's just a primitive part of how we have, survived over time with larger animals is that we've had to be able to freeze and not move because predators are driven by sight, a lot of them. So what we've done is if we don't move, we're safe. And
Yeah.
a lot of animals, the deer and fawn, they don't move, you
Oh
know.
yeah. Well, bed down and stay there till their mamas come back.
Yep, and you can walk right over them and you'll never know it. I really appreciate it. It's been an honor,
Oh,
and maybe sometime I'll head out there and we'll just sit there and take a look in the skies.
not a problem.
All right. Well, you take care, my friend, and again, contact me anytime, and I'll give a holler or a shout here in a few weeks just see how you're doing.
All right. I appreciate it.
You betcha. Thank you, sir. I appreciate your time, and you have a great day.
You too. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Take care, buddy.
All right. Bye bye.
Bye bye. So, as always, guys, I wanted to do a brief summary here. Now, I know the show was kind of lengthy here, but actually, I cut it down. This was about a 3-hour interview I did with this guest, so I actually cut quite a bit out. But I thought what I did leave was very, very intriguing, very interesting, and just spooky. This was very reminiscent, as you heard, to the Jeff story, episode 154 of what he saw when he was a teenager. So I thought, in fact, that's why he contacted me, this guest. He saw that show with Jeff and saw the dogs kind of around the feet of this creature that Jeff saw some years ago. And that brought a flood of memories, and so he wanted to share. And that's what happens sometimes. People sometimes will find a show that is, for whatever reason, they're just surfing through and they come upon a show and just things, they start listening to the episode and they go, that's what I saw. That's what I experienced. I didn't think anyone else had experienced that before. And it kind of leads him into reliving that event again. And so, as you heard with this gentleman, he was nervous when he was describing what he saw to me. I was trying to find the tapping noise, and it was him on his end through there. But I can understand. It's really hard to really say you understand. I say that because I've had my own experiences, and I can only get as close as I can in relating to what he went through. But still, then you really cannot put yourself in that position until you're in that position, and you hope you're never in that position, right? You're never in that experience or that circumstance. So a couple things were very interesting with this story, I thought, that was worth mentioning. One, him and his buddy were really in a remote area. There's so many places in Texas and other states too, but Texas is such a huge state. If you've never driven across Texas, it takes a while. And there's places out there, even though people own the property and ranches, they just don't really walk it all that often. And so some of these places probably haven't had a human traverse over the land or property in decades. So really, who knows what goes on someone's property at night or through the week? They wouldn't know, unless there's a cattle that are missing, or you're trying to find some livestock of some sort, that's gone missing. But they were hunting at night. Wiley, Dave, and I have hunted at night, predator hunting. We typically don't go when it's moonlit because coyotes, if they see you, they tend to stay away from you. And that's the general nature of coyotes. They typically don't want anything to do with humans. When they smell you, they want to get away from you as fast as possible. They're very perceptive about their surroundings, and they don't want anything to do with you. So, that was extremely strange. I have never heard of that at the end when he started describing that this creature, this alien-like creature, he felt was calling these coyotes in on him. And that, I just have to say, that is very, very spooky and bizarre. And the sheer number of coyotes that this creature was apparently calling in on them struck me as surprisingly strange. Very strange. I've never heard of a story like this before. Yeah, that'd be spooky too, hearing that many coyotes coming at you. Because usually when you're coyotes, if they're coming in to you, they're hunting, and you can just tell by the sounds, the howling sounds, the yipping. But to have them in an aggressive kind of a growl yip, and they're getting closer and closer, that's spooky. I will say that's spooky. And again, I've never heard of that before. So that was a first for me. Seeing this creature down in the bottom, and it resembled what Jeff saw. I thought that was spooky as well. Had the reversed leg at the bottom, which Jeff, if you recall that one, he sculpted, it had a reversed leg. And on Jeff's, it had these appendages. Now, this gentleman didn't say, he couldn't really see the appendages. I know I showed them in the show, but he said he really couldn't see what it had at the very, very end, but he could see that reversed joint in the lower leg, opposite of its knee, just like what's in Jeff's, what he sculpted and what he saw that night years and years ago. But he said he got a good look at this thing, and it was massive, and it didn't appear to be human at all. To him, it did not have hair. It was not a canine. He was absolute in that. If you notice how fast he answered that, he was absolute in that. It did not have pointed ears. It did not have a nose that pointed out like a human. He just knew that it didn't behave like a human when it cocked its head trying to figure him out. And when it advanced on him, it advanced fast. Now, of course, he doesn't know what happened when he got up. When he fired the rifle, by the way, I tried to recreate this. He was laying on his rifle, he was laying on the ground, but his rifle was sandwiched between him and the ground, the gravel. So when he pulled the trigger, it literally was right here and the barrel was right here, and he's laying on the ground and he's up looking like this. And when he fired it, he just fired it from his belly as he was sandwiched between the rifle was sandwiched between him and the ground. So he just pulled the trigger. He didn't know what to do. He was this freeze fright. And so he pulled the trigger, and it kind of allowed him to snap out of it. But also he was just trying to scare this creature off of him because it was advancing fast. So I don't blame him there. He can't recall what it was doing behind him because he didn't look. He was just telling his buddy, shoot, shoot, shoot. Of course, I didn't get a chance to. I asked him actually on some of the interview that I cut out, does he think I could talk to his buddy? And he said that he won't talk to you. They didn't talk about this ever again, which is, again, very common. Like I say all the time, when you have two or more people that have the same encounter, it seems like it's just inevitable. You'll have one person that wants to share, that wants to understand, that wants to talk about it. I'll tell you what happened. This is what happened. And they'll give you every detail, as this guest did. But then you always have the other, or you'll have more than one that absolutely doesn't want to talk about it. They actually, if you push it too much, they'll get angry. They'll get mad. And I think the reason why, it's just a natural defensive mechanism on reality is too scary. They don't want to relive that moment in telling me, and they don't want to relive it or even recognize the reality that that creature actually exists. So to them, by talking about it, it's acknowledging that that creature did exist, and what they experienced, they really experienced. So sometimes they get angry. And then everybody else kind of is in a variety of on the fence whether they want to share or not. You know, people, ridicule, embarrassment, those things kind of go through their head, whether they're willing to share that or not with you, of course. But this was a very strange encounter, to say the least. There was a lot of firsts for me in this, but also, you know, just in a nutshell here, I'll just say, I think that what Jeff saw years ago and what this gentleman saw could be the same type of creature. It could be. It appeared to be very alien-like. It was not human. Both of the men were absolute. This wasn't human. It was way too big to be any man or any person. It moved too fast. And for it, let's just say logically here, for it to be a person in a suit out literally in the middle of nowhere at night with no flashlight, no apparent firearm, anything like that, is odd. So the likelihood of that being someone in a suit is highly unlikely. It's just it's just not likely at all. So yeah, this was strange. And I thought also the grandmother to his ex-brother-in-law, when she was a little girl, and that would put that back in the I think we said 20s, something like that, when she saw a similar creature crossing over the fence line. That made me wonder, how long can these creatures live? Was it the same creature? Because that wasn't very far from where she grew up. And so I wondered, was that the same creature? Or was that another one? And they've been harboring in that area for who knows how long? Decades? Centuries? don't know. But, the advice she said, don't go back. Do not go back. And of course they didn't. I appreciate the courage, this guest calling me and willing to share. As you heard, he didn't want to be made fun of, and that's why he never told anybody. But he wanted to share so bad, you could tell, and it's still, after 34 years of when this occurred, he still had a level of post-trauma from this event. As he was telling me, I heard this, this tapping, and I was trying to figure out what it was on my end. I thought it was, sometimes I have some frequencies, some signals on my equipment kind of cross-contaminate, and I'll get this weird clicking, but it wasn't a click. And I'm like, where's that coming from? So I'm trying to listen and find out. It was on his end. He was tapping and it was during the time when he was explaining what he saw. And I thought, oh, he's nervous about this. He's recalling this event, and it's making him anxious, nervous. So he's reliving that moment as he's telling me. And I when I was going back through and editing, I figured that out, and that made total sense to me. And I don't blame him at all. Not at all. So anyway, let me know in the comments what you guys think. And if anybody out there has experienced anything remotely similar, a creature like this, please let me know. I would really like to know. I'd really like to hear. And I can tell you, this show, this channel does not judge. I've had my own experiences, very bizarre experiences. My brothers have too. I have close friends that have, and they continue to have, believe it or not. I saw my first UFO at 10 years old. I was by myself. I've had ghostly apparitions. I've got hours of recordings of EVPs. I saw my first Bigfoot when I was about 7 years old. I had a window experience at that same age. We've had lots of experiences of Sasquatch at deer camp at night down in southeast Oklahoma. And then Dave and I have had experiences on seeing this creature called the Dogman. We saw about 4 of them at 600 yards out in the panhandle of Oklahoma. So I've had quite a few. And so I can relate to what you're thinking. If you've seen something that you don't want to share, I felt the same way. So I understand. And during that time, I was in healthcare. And so, I'm supposed to be scientifically objective. And I am. But I really didn't care what people thought. I saw what I saw. I heard what I heard. I experienced what I experienced. So anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed this show. Please give some comments out there. Like, share, and subscribe. And as always, guys, be safe when you're out there. Have contingency plans. Tell someone where you're going. And always remember, we're never alone in the wilderness. But we're also never alone in the skies. Take care.